All right, welcome. We have a great audience and a great panel joining us today. This is webinar number 3 in a series. Today's topic has been driving a lot of attention, drive destruction and sustainability, the value of eco-focused tech disposal, and we'll have some very experienced here. My name is Fredrik Forsland. I have been in this industry with Banco for over 20 years. So it's great to see so much attention and interest in this topic. But let's move over to our experts of today. Let's start with ladies first. Monica, you're joining us from a very well-known organization, Accenture. A little bit about yourself and what you're seeing with Accenture as your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and be speaking about this today. So I'm Monica Kuroki. I'm based in London. I look after sustainability for our communications, media and entertainment, software and platforms and high-tech industries across the UK and Ireland. It's a very exciting and kind of pivotal space, I think, because connectivity and technology are the backbones of our society today. They power almost everything we do. It's so important to make sure that we get it right. And it's so exciting to see so many of our clients and so much of the industry trends to be moving towards net zero and low waste and circular economy, and what we can do to kind of accelerate that journey, as well as make sure it's done in a really sound and audit-proof way. So I think that data sanitation and erasure are really critical parts of this process, because when we look at the high tech and the software and platform industries, we're using a lot of technology, and that's creating a lot of waste. So what can we do to reuse and make our impact as low as possible by still driving those outcomes we want to get to?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Monica. And we're definitely part of a strong momentum here, incorporating many different verticals, advisors, and government, as well as private industry. Andrew, over to you. What are you seeing, and from what platform are you addressing us today?
Thanks a lot, Fredrik. I'm Andrew Bax. I work in the climate and sustainability team here at Deloitte. I'm based in London, like Monica. I work with all sorts of organisations and industries across sectors, so not specific to tech, but in a previous life, I actually worked in policy and in government, and I led the UK parliamentary inquiry on electronic waste and the circular economy. So this is a topic really close to my heart. In fact, just when the inquiry was in full flow, we had the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and at that time we suddenly saw these huge shifts in habits and changes to everything, really. But I think one of the things that really stood out while we were doing the inquiry was that the impact of the digital divide. So just echoing some of the points that Monica just made, the really important role of technology in helping people to access everyday life. And actually, we also saw how many people were impacted by not having that access. So they couldn't go to school or see loved ones. So we see a really important role for technology in the world, pandemic or no pandemic, but the electronics and technology sector does have a massive environmental impact, and we're seeing that with our clients all the time who are worried and thinking about these things. But electronics and technology are also really valuable in what they're used for, how they're designed and made, and also the materials that they have inside them. So we need to be thinking about technology in that wider sense as well as we drive towards net zero and a more circular economy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrew. And you're definitely coming from a very unique background, having both Accenture and Deloitte as leading organizations globally. We very much look forward to this dialogue. But I have Adam today, the CFO of Loco. Why is this so important, Adam? How your work?
Yeah, thank you, Fred. Yeah, I'm pleased to be able to join the panel today. As Fred says, I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Blanco. Blanco are a company listed on the London Stock Exchange, and as well as hopefully having a solution which can help companies with their own environmental impact, we're also reflecting ourselves on the way that we do business and how sustainable we can be. And so we were pleased last year to have achieved carbon neutral status with business, which is something we want to maintain as the first step on a road to net zero. So, and my role within that is to lead all things ESG within the organisation. So I'm very familiar with the challenges that companies come up against as they seek to improve the impact that they have on the environment and how they can report on that, along with a lot of the incoming regulation that's coming through over the next couple of years. So hopefully I can bring that perspective to the discussion.
Excellent. And if we just take a look back, what we have experienced in the industry, Adam, we've had security has always been the top question and the driving topic when it comes to data sanitization. But we can surely see that sustainability has become an equally important question. And how would you articulate the way that that is apparent in your role and what you're meeting in the market?
Yeah, well, I think data security has been a concern for companies for a long time, and not just companies, for individuals as well. I mean, none of us would dispose of a laptop or PC with all of the data present on the device. We've always been concerned with how we're going to make sure that data isn't compromised, whether it's our home PC or the one we use at work. But clearly companies have that issue on a much larger scale, where they may have lots of data related to customers, and now the environment around the likes of GDPR mean very huge penalties coming through as a result of any compromise of that data. So that has always been a problem, but key solution for that problem has traditionally been destroying that equipment, typically shredding it into very small pieces such that none of the data can be recovered. And that does work. I mean, if you shred it into small enough pieces, you can't recover the data. But obviously that has a very negative environment. Really, the use of data erasure means that you can sanitize that device completely such that all data can't be recovered, and then that enables you to then recycle, reuse, resell, or do whatever it is you might want to do with the device without the need to destroy it. But as we sit here today, the prevalent way of managing that issue is still around destroying the equipment. So we know last year that around about 300 million PCs and laptops were sold globally. We would imagine that in most instances they're replacing older pieces of equipment. So that means you've got almost 300 million devices being disposed of. But we also know that Blanco's customers only erase around about 15 million of those devices. So it still leaves hundreds of millions of devices which aren't being erased and therefore are being destroyed. And the latest data from the UN shows that over 50 million tons of e-waste is generated globally on an annual basis. Around about half of that comes from computer equipment. People are very concerned that that equipment is going to have the data compromised. And that goes into landfill, not just in the countries where it was originated from, but often it's shipped to third world countries for putting into landfill, releases chemicals that are present within that device. So mercury being released into the soil, which has its own negative impact as well. So there's a huge number of very negative environmental impacts that come from the destruction of IT equipment at the end of life. I think on top of that, it stops any of those devices coming back into the circular economy. So the next generation of devices have to be made from newly mined minerals, which means that the carbon impact of the next generation of computer equipment is much greater than it needs to be as well. We see that changing over time, and really you're going to need the use of technologies such as data erasure to enable much more circularity and much more sustainable behavior.
So clearly we have a strong sustainability trend, and we saw that Financial Times is a major publication did a deep dive into data centers and how drives are being shredded instead of reused, and got a lot of attention around that media scope, and have recently released video follow-up on the same topic. So this is also hitting the major media outlets and the bigger publications as a topic. So there's a lot of attention here. But if we look at the driving forces for enterprises to decide to take action, Monica, if I start with you, what examples are you seeing with sort of hard facts, hard decisions that are making companies acting towards change?
Definitely. Great question. So I think there are a few different drivers right now. So I think people are getting more familiar with the framework of ESG, so environment, social, and governance. So now companies are being reviewed and giving scores on an ESG score to say basically how aligned they are with kind of the standard of good, sustainability being that bar. And we're seeing that many businesses that have high ESG scores are doing better. They're more highly performant. They have better financial outcomes. They have more engaged workplaces, and they're able to retain and attract better talent, essentially. So those products and services that they're creating are attractive both from a business perspective as well as internally. The teams that are creating it, they feel aligned with the company's value and purpose. So you get a lot more out as a business if you're operating kind of with that mentality and in that framework. I think it's also really relevant to discuss. We're living through a variety of crises at the same time. So we have the cost of living crisis, we have the energy crisis, we have several kind of all happening at the same time. And as businesses feel that pressure, and consumers kind of feel that cost of living crisis, so consumers are reducing spend. So businesses need to look more internally to see how they can reduce those operating expenses, or maybe bring down some of those fees, and how they can run the business more with more intention and more purposefully of how they're spending their funds. So if they're able to use practices like data erasure or other methods that let them reduce the number of new products that they need, or they can create new revenue streams by selling off older products that are now able to be used again, that's a huge source of potential for a business that's looking for new opportunities or new revenue streams. So it's kind of just a variety of different channels that people are thinking of sustainability and what the value at stake is. But we see kind of different examples based on the industry.
So very much aligning with the core business purpose and the top line as well as bottom line, and in achieving the change that you want to see in the organization. Are you seeing the same things, Andrew, from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Very kind of similar things to what Monica was talking about. I think there's as well as doing good, which is a really important part of this, of course, and helping the environment, which is a real crisis at the moment. I think actually some of these circular activities that might help keep data centers or electronics more widely in use for longer has a range of benefits. So there can be financial benefits. We're seeing big increases in the cost of some of the raw materials in electronics, in data centers, in hard drives. If you can keep those hard drives and data centers for longer, there can be financial savings, really, if you can find ways of doing that. There's lots of value in those products. I think, as Monica was saying, at the kind of wider level, organizations that really have sustainability embedded into them are generally seeing premiums on a range of things in terms of what they're selling to customers, and also savings throughout their supply chains and logistics, where they're really focused on energy efficiency, on resource efficiency. They're actually seeing lots of savings. So there's a financial benefit. As Monica said, the sustainability credentials more widely are really under scrutiny at the moment, and by regulators, by customers, by politicians. Everybody is really focused on sustainability, and we're seeing that. And so if an organization can do more prove and show its credentials, it's having a lot of benefit in terms of its stakeholder management. I think in this space specifically, there's also a lot of social benefits, and Monica touched on this. And I mentioned it earlier. There's this kind of digital divide. There's still a lot of need globally for access to internet, access to computing. In the UK, I think that 6% of households don't have access to internet. Globally, there's some places where only 43% have access to the internet. So if you can keep some of those devices for longer, you could really help a lot of people get more access to internet rather than just shredding some of these things.
And looking at all of these opportunities, let's classify them as opportunities to improve and do good. We're calling this series Erasing Data for Good, and we understand where the connection is. But also looking at stakeholders within the organizations, within the companies, would you say that we're sitting at the top level? Are these questions driven from board of directors directly as a follow-up question? Monica, if you want to start.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, to be honest, we're seeing it from the top down as well as bottom up. And so the reason I say that is because a lot of executives are interested, from a personal perspective of what they can do as leaders in their industry or of their organization to do the right thing and reduce their impact. And by reduce their impact, they're also looking to reduce their risk of exposure to new regulations, as well as impacts from climate change or any other kind of exposures that they may have for upcoming legislation. But they're also looking to stay relevant with their peers and competitors. So the companies, as we mentioned, that have really strong ESG scores or are viewed as leaders in sustainability, they are the innovators. They are the ones that are pushing the envelope forward. And good business just says that we should be continuously innovating and kind of seeing what the next horizon is. Then I say it also comes from a bottoms up perspective, because sustainability often feels really personal to people working. So they want to make sure that they are doing their bit. So they want to understand, this is my job, but how can I do my job aligned to my company's values? Or what can I do to make this, this planet that I'm living on, or this environment or community that I live in, better for the next generation, whether it be for children or for your family in a family and friends way, or even just for your neighbor to make it more accessible for others. So I think it comes from both sides. I think we get a lot of traction when it comes from a top-down perspective, because often you need to set that strategy and the vision and the mission along with KPIs and break those down, so that those teams that are looking to execute and drive, they understand specifically what we're trying to do, how they need to do it, and what role they can play to make sure that the organization is successful in achieving those goals.
Excellent. So a lot of passion in the organizations if you implement these changes and practices in a good way as well. And looking at passion and then also finding other sort of requirements that are forcing us to take action. And Andrew, if we just look at in security, we always work closely with understanding regulatory requirements. We've all been in a different world over the last 5 years since GDPR came into action. We understand the value of protecting data on a whole different level. But what are the regulatory things to look out for here within the sustainability field? I would love to hear from you on that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we could probably break down the regulations into certain categories, because there's a lot of them and they're happening everywhere globally. And I think we're seeing clients very sort of confused and a bit concerned because lots is happening. But I think one of the key areas that we're seeing, and this is happening everywhere in the globe, is a drive to sustainability reporting of some form. So there's a real push for people to be reporting on their carbon footprint and other things, circularity, waste, and then how they are managing that footprint and how they're managing the impact of changes in the environment on themselves. So that there's a whole stream, an area around reporting, and that will lead to scrutiny. you're talking about your carbon footprint publicly, everyone will look at it, which is why there's such a focus on reporting. But then there's other areas as well. There's circular economy legislation. There's a big push around critical minerals at the G7, particularly, but it's happening globally. There's a bit of a race for critical materials. We're seeing the price of lithium, for example, has doubled in the last 5 years. That there's a real push around making sure that supply of critical minerals is secure. And there's lots of legislation coming around that. Last week, the EU just published its Critical Mineral Act in proposal form. And then we have things like carbon pricing and supply chain legislation that's coming in as well. So I would say those are the kind of 5 areas: reporting, circular economy, critical minerals, carbon pricing, and supply chains that in this sector, technology, we really need to be thinking about.
So I think we have definitely heard from you to understand the why. We understand it from different aspects. So let's talk about the how. How do we get practical here? What are good examples, good cases that you can share from being in a unique position to be involved in many different industries and giving advice in a lot of different contexts? So what are your favorite good examples that we could share with the audience today? Monica, if you would like to start.
Yeah, very happy to. So we have some really exciting credentials, and we've done some work publicly and some work we'll keep anonymized. But I think in the recent kind of last few years, we've published some really exciting papers with a variety of partners that ones like in North America, CTIA and CWTA. So those are some of the telecommunications and connectivity standards across North America, where we've looked at kind of the power of technology and the future of networks and what technology can do to drive down carbon emissions. So how technology can drive abatement, basically. So that's lowering the carbon footprint, but improving the experience. And that's done through optimized networks. It's looking at different ways to connect devices and people. It's looking at all of the efficiencies that come through new technologies, through software and platforms, through high technology devices, anything kind of, using a chip or using the internet. So we've done papers like that have been really exciting. We've also looked at some of our high-tech partners to see how we can understand and reduce kind of their waste. So doing a full IT audit of their organization to understand kind of what the infrastructure looks like, what the devices their employees are using, how those devices are going end of life, what the life cycle expectancy is for each. And kind of we've gone as far as for network providers, for example, we've calculated the carbon footprint, the full life cycle assessment for building a network, using a network, and then decommissioning a network. So we're looking across a variety of different areas within our media and entertainment space, because that's also highly linked to technology. We're often looking at how we can create diverse and kind of storylines aligned with science, and then how we can get those media leaders, so people who are printing, publishing, and creating content, to do it more efficiently. So that's maybe using the cloud or using other technology enhancements to improve their production life cycle and reduce the amount of travel needed, or encourage remote collaboration, so we don't have that huge carbon footprint associated with delivering services and creating content. So we've done some really exciting projects, which has been super fulfilling to make sure that we're pushing that needle forward. And a lot of it has to do with the devices we use and how we can basically use what we have to get more out of it, be more efficient, and influence the largest population towards similar or net good behavior.
Those are great examples and hopefully inspiring for our large audience today. Andrew, would you like to fill in and give some of your favorites as we wrap up this quick introduction but important session?
Yes, I'll just talk about a few case studies, not necessarily work that we've done directly, though we have done a lot, but just to give a flavour of some of the different organisations around data centres, some of what recycling companies are doing around some of these things, and also some of the equipment manufacturers and retailers. So I think one big example, I guess, is what Microsoft are doing. So we did a paper last year on data centers and the environmental impact of them. So in our circularity case study we looked at how Microsoft have been piloting their Microsoft Circular Centers, and they've had actually a really big impact. They've managed to drive reuse up to 83%. They're recycling a lot more, up to 17% of the critical parts. And actually what they've found is they've had a massive saving. Globally, just the pilot, they think that they could move up to $100 million of savings just from being more circular in their data centers. So I think it's just a really powerful example of what we were talking about earlier, these financial benefits that come with also being more sustainable. It's a win-win situation. I will stop there because I'm conscious of time. So I'll hand back to you, Fred.
No, that's excellent examples. And when we see those hard numbers indicating savings potential, that's when we really get everything aligned. And I know that, Adam, you have also been personally involved in a very good case, seeing how computer equipment can come into a good CSR context. And if we give that as a good example as well before we wrap up together.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we see quite a lot with our customers is those that want to donate any equipment to worthy causes. And indeed, we work with the Turing Trust in particular, who we donate licenses to. They then seek donations from companies out there of computer equipment they no longer wish to use. They use Blanco software to erase that data from those devices and then look to supply them to schools in Africa. So just this week, we saw 800 PCs shipped to Kenya, to schools in Kenya. We've previously sent devices to Malawi and Mali. And so we're now running into, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 computers that have gone out. So not only are you dealing with the E and ESG and helping environmentally and reducing your waste footprint, but you're also creating some social positives as well that you can report on.
Really good to hear. And if we try to summarize together, we've definitely understood why this is so important. We've heard some really good examples of how different organizations have taken action and what that could mean in experiencing projects and ESG initiatives that create passion in the organization, and how important it is to look at IT equipment and make sure to extend life without risking security and data protection. If we try to give the audience a final sort of, what do you want to send with us as a one recommendation or something to look at specifically, Monica, what would be your advice to everyone joining us today?
Definitely. I would say focus particularly on the topic for data sanitation and why it links to ESG and sustainability. I would say beginning your journey sooner than later is better. The reason it's better is because you'll have a better understanding of what you're performing at now, so what your baseline is, what realistic targets you can set in the future, and what that potential risk or exposure area is for you, so that you can begin kind of your transition plan, as well as understanding what the underpinnings, so the steps you actually have to do, how much it will cost, what resources are needed from a people perspective to get to those goals. I think that's really important. So just getting started is the most important part, and understanding the various elements that need to play a role in your strategy. So data security being one, data erasure being another. Maybe you're doing some decarbonization strategy. Maybe you're doing some nature-based strategy. So how you can make nature a nature positive improvement from your operations or from your, from your team. All of those things add up together, but it's really important that you need to look at a well-rounded kind of 360 view of what you need to do to get your organization on that glide path that you'd like to be on at a timeline that's reasonable for you.
So get started and know the context of how to do that in a good way. Excellent. Thank you so much. Andrew, wise words, please.
Well, building on what Monica said, that point around getting started, and with circularity, I think circularity is hundreds of minor actions that can that can really lead to an overall more circular economy, which will have so many benefits. It's lots of small things. It's extending the life of something in a small way. What can you do to do that? And so if you just get started and start thinking about these hundreds of little actions, and actually Virgin Media O2 talk about circular actions in their strategies. Actually, I think that's a nice concept. Can we talk about small little actions to take? That is it extending the life by giving it to a charity? Is it repairing something maybe a little bit more more than you might originally, rather than just disposing of something? Is it preventing something from being shredded by using a data sanitation tool? That might be a bigger way, or you might want to just pilot it with a few. So I think it's taking lots of those little actions to start that journey, and so really get started, I guess, is the same message from me.
Absolutely. And what you said, avoid any kind of physical destruction of functioning IT equipment just to protect the data. There are ways to get around that for sure. And Adam, we expect to see that increase in awareness as well, right?
Yeah, I think I won't stray too far from Monica and Andrew's themes really, but I think for me, the message is just not to underestimate the scale of the project that's coming. The regulation that's coming through is going to require companies to report on their carbon impact. And actually understanding what that impact is a really significant task. We went through it last year. We couldn't do it without external assistance. Regulations coming in 23, that means that all companies over a certain size are going to need to do this in 24. And there's only so many companies out there who can help you with this. They're going to be under a lot of pressure next year as everybody tries to come to terms with it at the same time. So yeah, get hold of it early. Don't underestimate. This is going to be quite a task for particularly the larger companies out there.
Excellent. Thank you all three for very good contributions, and hopefully this has been inspiring for today's large audience. Take away some good examples and new ideas. And then also get ready for the 4th episode in this webinar series, where we will actually look at what technology can bring and how we can automate the sanitization part and making it a natural component in our asset lifecycle management and data lifecycle management. So thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure to hear from the panel, and we hope you'll have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you shortly.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.